Natasha.
Debbie.
Show.
The show.
Welcome to it. Just two patriotic girls.
Learning about the world.
So please, don't take us the wrong way.
Hi, welcome to the Natasha and Debbie show.
What's my name again?
Natasha.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. She's been drinking.
She started the video too quick. I wasn't
She's
quite
drunk.
ready.
Debbie's
I
drunk.
am not drunk. Stop that. Before we get started, if you like today's video, please hit that like button and also consider subscribing to our channel. It's absolutely free.
Thanks for sending that to
Yes,
her.
thank you. I love it.
Okay, so we're changing gears off the food for just a moment this month.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at a video that we've talked about doing since we started the channel. The show. I don't like calling it a channel.
No,
This is a show. Anyway. But, so here's the thing. I looked up a while back, and I've done it again recently, who is like considered the top most beloved Briton, I guess you could say. And that's what the poll was titled, so don't get mad at me. And most of the time, it comes up as Winston Churchill. Sometimes Alan Turing is close to the list, but I've seen one where he was #1. But most of them say Winston Churchill. Now, I know talking to our Facebook friends and Patreon friends, it's here and here.
Yep.
There's some people I know that don't like the man. We don't know a lot about him.
Not a ton. I do know we learned about him in school. I don't quite remember a ton about it.
I remember a lot of his quotes, but I don't remember them per se. You know what I mean? Like a lot of really cool quotes and stuff like that. And but we know he was definitely pivotal in World War II. So anyway, this video is called what?
This is called Winston Churchill in the Darkest Hour.
So this is a Simon video. We know some of you love him. We know some of you hate him, but we love Simon. He gives a lot of great information. Without any further ado, we're going to check this video out and leave us a comment on your thoughts on Winston Churchill. Just be nice, be nice. And we have a lot to learn here, I think. So again, it's an overview, so it's not going to be like a very long, everything about him type video.
Nothing in depth. And if he misses something, please leave that in the comments.
Yes, let us know.
We imagine Winston Churchill with his signature cane, drinking Scotch whiskey and puffing on a Cuban cigar. His mouth is downturned and his voice is gruff and his words pointed. This is the image that Hollywood portrays, but it is a mere caricature of the flesh and blood version. So who was Winston Churchill? In Britain's darkest hour, Churchill led his country from the brink of Nazi conquest by forging an alliance with the US and Russia. He had many critics and made mistakes on a grand scale, yet above all possessed an unwavering belief in his own power. To his beloved country, he offered his blood, toil, tears, and sweat.
Wow.
Behind the political figure was a family man, a man of literary distinction, an artist, a great lover of pets, and a tinkerer. Yes, Winston Churchill had many hobbies. Today on Biographics, we paint the complex picture of the lion, Sir Winston Churchill.
I did forget to mention one little thing. So we found out in this video there is a very short section of a BBC copywritten thing, and I looked and saw what it was when we checked the video.
That's right.
And it's just like Simon talking over a photo. So unfortunately, that part's going to be trimmed out of the video, and we might lose a little context. So apologies for that, but we're getting around those copyrights if we can. Anyway, back to the video. Sorry. Okay, this I don't know anything about, so I'm interested.
So Winston Churchill was born on November 30th, 1874, into the upper echelons of British society. His father was Lord Randolph Henry Spencer Churchill, a prominent politician and the third son of the 7th Duke of Marlborough.
Was he related to Princess Diana? I feel like I've heard that before than hearing the name Spencer Churchill.
Yeah.
Do you remember hearing that too?
I don't remember hearing that, but
I might be totally
I did have that
wrong.
thought hearing the Spencer
Yeah,
name also.
That made me think that, but then I thought I remember hearing in the comments of previous videos when he's been brought up in things, people might have said that. I mean, maybe Simon will say it too, but I don't know. Let us know if I'm totally wrong, and if I am, I'm sorry.
Randolph Henry Spencer Churchill, a prominent politician and the third son of the 7th Duke of Marlborough. Churchill's mother, Jenny Jerome, was an American beauty and socialite, the daughter of a wealthy New York stockbroker and financier. The glamorous couple would seem like a match made in heaven, but they lived mostly apart and carried on separate lives. They also couldn't really be bothered with the young Winston. The very privilege of his pedigree didn't afford him the kind of love and affection that he sought from his parents. Sadly, throughout his life, both father and mother were distant and neglectful.
Fair.
Fortunately, though, for the young Winston, there was one adult in his life who provided emotional support and acted like a mother figure: Churchill's nanny, Elizabeth Everest. Womb, as Winston called her after a failed attempt at saying woman as a child, was hired to care for Winston when he was 1 month old. She would remain his only real friend and confidant throughout his childhood. When she passed away, Churchill said of her, "She had been my dearest and most intimate friend during the whole 20 years I had lived. I shall never know such a friend again." Winston was just 7 years old when he was sent away to St. George's School at Ascot, a boarding school. It was not uncommon for schoolchildren in upper-class society to be sent away, but his mother dropped him off at Paddington Station alone to catch the train. At his first school, Winston was bullied and bruised by the headmaster, who commonly birched the students, a form of corporal punishment that involved striking the bare bottoms of boys that misbehaved. With visible scars on Winston from the beatings and pleas from his loving nanny, his parents withdrew him and placed him in the Brighton School in 1882. Winston escaped the brutality of his first school, but not the lessons at Brighton, which he despised. Winston hated the regiments and was rebellious. His poor academic scores and speech impediment, a lisp, made Winston an easy target and subject to ridicule. In 1888, Winston enrolled at the Harrow School, but with abysmal entry scores. He placed at the bottom of his class. At Harrow, Winston excelled in the subjects that interested him, including English and history. He also demonstrated a prowess for the sport of fencing, winning the public school's fencing championship. Yet the few bright spots were overshadowed by deep sadness. Winston recalled, "In retrospect, those years form not only the least agreeable, but also the only barren and unhappy part of my life." Winston Churchill nearly died from a self-imposed act of bravado at the age of 18 when he jumped off a bridge. He would later endure 3 days of unconsciousness, a ruptured kidney, and 3 months in bed. It happened when the teenager was playing chase with his 12-year-old brother Jack and his 14-year-old cousin while vacationing at their aunt's estate. According to Churchill, in his 1930 memoir, he was trapped on a rustic bridge, with brother at one end and cousin at the other. Rather than be captured, Churchill leapt from the bridge, aiming for a pine tree to slide down. He greatly misjudged the distance and fell the full height onto hard ground. Churchill was extremely lucky to survive, but it wouldn't be his last brush with death. Indeed, during his life, Churchill was prone to accidents, including crashing a plane while learning to fly, nearly drowning in a lake, falling several times from horses, and getting hit by a car while trying to cross New York's Fifth Avenue.
Wow.
That's why you don't jaywalk. We've been telling you, it's not a joke. You don't jaywalk.
That's a lot to go through already.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. First of all, I didn't know any of that. And I thought I was accident prone.
Right.
And I am, believe me. I've hurt myself sitting here. You just don't know.
But you haven't crashed a plane.
What's that?
You didn't crash a plane. And you didn't get hit by a car.
Well.
You haven't tried to fly a plane. So.
That's a lot. And what a sad life. It sucks when your parents just drops them off at the station by himself. Here, get out.
Even being affluent, parents just really weren't involved.
Yeah, usually when people have that type of childhood, typically, they took the wrong path, you know?
Yep.
Not wanting to serve country and you know, typically, I'm not trying to be generalizing too much here, but you hear about that a lot, you know?
Exactly.
So that's interesting and also sad. This is fascinating already. And I don't know about his service.
Due to his poor grades at Harrow, it appeared Churchill's only chance at a career was through the army. It took Churchill 3 attempts to pass the exam for the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. Churchill described taking the Latin portion of the exam and leaving it completely blank except for his name, a number, a blot, and several smudges. His father had wanted him to be in the infantry, but his scores were only good enough for the cavalry. The new training at Sandhurst excited Churchill, and over the next 18 months, Churchill thrived. He recalled, "I was no longer handicapped by past neglect of Latin, French, or mathematics. We now had to learn fresh things, and we all started equal. Tactics, fortification, topography, military law, and military fortification formed the entire curriculum. In addition were drill, gymnastics, and riding." Churchill finished 20th out of 130 in his graduating class. Churchill
is that him in that photo?
Churchill finished.
I mean, what a uniform.
What a handsome young man. And yes.
I know.
Yeah, actually.
I'm impressed by the uniform. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that is. Oh, you guys did
I want to
so
wear
well.
that uniform.
I want to wear that uniform.
Right?
Hi, we have a P.O. Box address in the description of all of our videos.
I don't know that that uniform is still available anywhere.
Hi. That's awesome. That's just sexy.
I love it. I mean, that's a hot uniform.
It's hot and it's just really well done. Dang. Okay, sorry. We're being typical
Bear with
women
us.
right now.
20th out of 130 in his graduating class. Churchill craved action and showed no fear on the battlefront. Churchill knew that he was destined for great things, and he had to prove it to the world, and war provided the perfect opportunity to do so. Churchill served in the British Army, though, only for a short time, from 1895 to 1899, and during the same time wrote military reports for newspapers, as well as 2 books: The Story of the Malaccan Field Force and The River War. In 1899, Churchill stepped into politics, trying to win election to the House of Commons, but he failed. Without hesitation, he travelled to South Africa to cover Britain's war with the Boers as a London post-war correspondent. At the age of 25, Churchill arrived in Cape Town with 18 bottles of scotch and a guarantee of $150,000 in today's money for a 4-month assignment. One day, Churchill admitted to his brother, "There is no ambition I cherish so keenly as to gain a reputation for personal courage." He would soon get the chance to earn that reputation in South Africa. While covering the war, Churchill was aboard a train with soldiers sent on a reconnaissance mission. The train was suddenly ambushed by the enemy, and Churchill immediately sprung into action. Under fire, he acted like a decorated general and ordered the soldiers with him to flee to safety. Most of them did, but Churchill was captured as a prisoner of war and sent to Pretoria. Churchill's conditions in captivity, they could have been worse. The Boers allowed prisoners to buy cigarettes, beer, and newspapers. But Churchill hated every moment of it, feeling the opportunity for glory slipping him by. One night, with no real plan of how to make it out of 300 miles of enemy territory, he made a daring escape. A massive manhunt ensued, and the fugitive Churchill was wanted dead or alive. He avoided capture, travelling at night and drinking water from streams, and when he could go no further, he took a chance by knocking on a stranger's door. On the other side, he knew not whether there'd be friend or foe. Saved by pure chance or fate, it was an Englishman who answered. "I felt like a drowning man pulled out of the water," Churchill would recall. The Englishman was John Howard, a coal mine manager who hid Churchill in a pitch-black mine before he could be smuggled to safety. During this time in the mine, rats were Churchill's only company. In Britain, the story of an English lord's son escaping prison camp and humiliating the Boers was a boost to the nation. He became a hero and a celebrity pretty much overnight.
Okay, well, again, we're only taught about World War II with him.
With and newfound popularity, Churchill ran for office, and this time in 1900, he was elected as a Member of Parliament in the House of Commons. This was the start of a 55-year-long political career with the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. Churchill once said, "Politics is almost as exciting as war and quite as dangerous. In war, you can only be killed once, but in politics, many times." Churchill was a conservative when he first stepped into the House of Commons, but he repeatedly clashed with his party on a number of issues. Free trade was crucial in his mind, and in 1904 it was his party's support of tariffs that made Churchill cross the floor to the opposing Liberal side. It infuriated his fellow Conservatives, but it proved to be great timing. The Liberals took control soon after. As a newfound Liberal, Churchill concerned himself with social reforms and laid the groundwork for the post-war welfare state. Churchill again ratted or switched sides back to the Conservative Party in 1925. The flippant politician was highly criticised for the moves, and he was seen as an untrustworthy opportunist. Churchill's greatest political failure, though, the one that nearly ruined his career, came in 1915. World War I was at a stalemate along the Western Front, with Allied troops engaged in deadly trench warfare. Anxious to end it, Britain's War Cabinet authorised a bold military attack. The mastermind of the 40-year-old First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill. The campaign would send troops over 1,000 miles to the east, establishing a second front to eventually seize Constantinople and take control of the sea route from Europe to Russia. The plan involved a naval attack through the wrong. Churchill bore the brunt of this fate.
Dang it. That's the part that was trimmed out from the copyright. Sorry about that.
We'll make it through.
Yeah. Well, if you know that, let us know. We'll go back and watch it ourselves, actually. The part that's taken out. It was like a minute. It was like a minute long, wasn't it? Well, there's a lot that happened in that minute.
And it forced his resignation from politics for a while. Churchill, he used this opportunity to return to the war front. The Gallipoli campaign haunted Churchill for decades. "Remember the Dardanelles" was a favourite taunt from political opponents throughout his career. A second controversy would plague Churchill for a decade and send him into political exile, a period known as the Wilderness Years. In 1929, a debate erupted over self-government in India, which was, at the time, under British rule. Churchill was no doubt an imperialist and was vehemently opposed. He also had no love for Gandhi. He saw him as a threat to the British Empire and went so far as to say Gandhi should not be released on the account of a mere threat of fasting. We should be rid of a bad man and an enemy of the empire if he died. Except for the most right-wing of conservatives, Churchill was alone in his position.
Okay.
Much has been written about Winston Churchill the statesman, but what was the bulldog like at home? Who was he to his friends and his family? When Clementine Hosier met the 29-year-old Winston in 1904 at a dance, she wasn't impressed. He didn't ask her to dance, just stared, and never uttered one word, and was very gauche. 4 years later, they would meet again at a dinner party, and this time a romance blossomed. The couple married in 1908 and would endure 57 years together until Winston's death at the age of 90.
He said endure, like it was miserable. Not enjoyed. He went with the word endure.
He did.
I'm like, I don't know if I'd use that word.
Well, maybe he'll tell us more about that.
I'm just saying, it's a word, an adjective I wouldn't have chosen.
And would endure 57 years together until Winston's death at the age of 90. Even though Clementine's politics differed from Winston's, she was fiercely supportive and made standing by her man her #1 priority. She quietly advised him and was the only person who could reprimand his behavior. Clementine once said she would have loved to have been a statesman in her own right if she had been born with trousers rather than petticoats.
Exactly.
Winston was overbearing and temperamental at times, but he was always transparent in his love for his wife, proudly boasting to Roosevelt, "I tell Clemmy everything." On occasion, the couple would fight, though. Money was a constant worry for Clementine, who was born into the aristocracy, but wound up penniless in her youth. Winston overspent, enjoyed gambling, and was in and out of debt. During one particularly passionate dispute, Clementine famously threw a plate of spinach at her husband, but it missed. She also never really forgave him for buying the family home in Money Pit, Chartwell, doing so on the sly when she was laid up from giving birth. The couple had 5 children, but only 4 would survive into adulthood. Their third child, Marigold, died at the age of 2.5 from septicemia, which is an infection of the blood. Unfortunately for her, this is a condition that modern-day antibiotics would easily cure. Clementine shrieked in anger like an animal in mortal pain upon her daughter's death. 1 year later, the Churchill's 4th child, Mary, was born. Winston, he was delighted to have the nursery in use again. Churchill's duties as a statesman often took him away from home, but he was devoted to his family. Determined to be different from his own parents, who were distant and cold, whenever he could, he doted upon his children. He built them a treehouse at the family home and used his skills as a bricklayer to construct a little summer house for Mary.
I find that adorable and also very cool. You know, some people do that. You know, some people have had a rough time as a kid. They don't have the family, and then they step it up. You go one way or another, right? When you have a bad childhood, you take the road that you went down, that your parents gave to you, and you repeat it. Right. Or you take the road where you do the exact damn opposite, and you become the better parent. And you know how to do it because you know what you didn't get.
Yeah.
And that impresses me about him right there. It just does.
At the family home and used his skills as a bricklayer to construct a little summer house for Mary. Over 40 years at Chartwell, Churchill proudly improved the property by using his own hands, building ponds, structures and bridges. The Churchills had a multitude of pets, domestic and exotic. Churchill was an animal lover his whole life. As a teen in 1891, he even sold his bicycle to buy a bulldog named Dodo. At the family home, they had both cats and dogs, as well as sold his bicycle to buy...
You know how they say people look like their pets?
I was going to say that.
I could tell. I could feel it. 20 years, lady. I know what you're thinking. Come on.
He didn't look like the poodle, but
no,
he does look like this one.
Was it Dodo? Did I just pick that up? I don't remember his name.
I think so.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's a fact. Did I look like Jazz and you look like Tyson?
I don't know which one of us look like which dog.
I mean, Jazz and I have the same colored hair. We're both blonde.
I guess so. I don't know.
Look at your dogs and your cats in front of you right now, and then go look in a mirror.
And say, do I look like my dog?
Just take a selfie. And if you're on our Facebook page, do that in the comments of this video and stick that picture on there. We want to see if you're paying attention. But never have I seen a person and their animal, their dog, look more alike than...
Exactly.
by a bulldog named Dodo. At the family home, they had both cats and dogs, as well as pigs, fish, butterfly, sheep, horses, and black swans.
Butterfly?
There was even a parrot called Charlie, who it was rumoured Churchill talked to squawk obscenities against Hitler and the Nazis, though this hasn't been proven and is most likely a myth. When not enamored with
But it's
politics
fun.
and acting as the savior of his country, Churchill was writing, painting, playing polo, laying bricks at the family home, or vacationing with friends in Monte Carlo or some other exotic locale.
Must be nice. All right, that's the face I know.
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender. If it wasn't for Hitler and the Nazis, Churchill may never have become Britain's Prime Minister. After losing his cabinet position in 1929, many believed Churchill's political career was over. Even though he was out of politics, he was not out of the public eye. He continued to write books, speeches, and newspaper articles, and warned of the dangers of Hitler. From his home in Kent, the predictions of the growing Nazi power and the quest for domination was coming true. He later wrote in his memoirs, "My warnings over the last 6 years had been so numerous, so detailed, and were now so terribly vindicated that no one could gainsay me."
Didn't know anything really about him prior to World War II. So I had no idea that he was writing and warning people about the Nazi Party and Hitler.
Beforehand.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Okay.
At the war's outbreak, then Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain brought Churchill back into the fray as Britain's First Lord of the Admiralty, the same position that he held during the First World War. Chamberlain had tried and failed to strike a peace deal with Hitler, and he showed himself to be incapable of turning the rapid tide of fascism. Chamberlain had also lost the support of his cabinet when British troops couldn't prevent the occupation of Norway in 1940. Chamberlain resigned, and Churchill took over as Prime Minister at the darkest hour. That same day, May the 10th, Hitler invaded Holland, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Churchill was a brilliant orator. Thanks to his mastery of words, he inspired his countrymen to fight, and some of his speeches during the early days of the war are some of the most powerful in the English language. Victory was the only option. He never even considered defeat, even when the outlook looked most grim. When France fell to the Nazis.
And how thankful we have to be that victory was the only option, and that he fought and encouraged and never gave up.
And I was just thinking, you want someone in power during a war or anything bad like that to be that type of person, who doesn't give up, who doesn't even consider defeat.
Yes.
That's who you want, right? I mean, he had his faults, he made mistakes, obviously.
Of course.
But that's that right there. That part is something you need and you want.
Absolutely.
Consider defeat, even when the outlook looked most grim.
See,
when
you want that
France fell to the
positivity.
Nazis, Britain was alone in its fight. Churchill knew his island nation could not win the war alone. He would need the United States. And when Germany invaded Russia, Churchill saw an opportunity to forge an unlikely alliance. Britain came to Stalin's end, and Churchill defended the decision during this desperate time, saying, "No one has been a more consistent opponent of communism for the last 25 years. I will unsay no word I have spoken about it, but all this fades away before the spectacle which is now unfolding. The past, with its crimes, its follies, its tragedies, flashes away. The Russian danger is therefore our danger, and the danger of the United States, just as the cause of any Russian fighting for hearth and house is the cause of free men and free peoples in every quarter of the globe." To forge the Big Three alliance, Churchill cultivated a friendship with the American President Franklin D. Roosevelt. This was something that would convince him to join the war effort. He invited himself to the White House and arrived 2 weeks after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The Prime Minister stayed 3 weeks, through Christmas and well past his welcome in Eleanor Roosevelt's eyes. But it was absolutely critical to solidifying their alliance and winning over the Americans. The two bonded over daily lunches and late-night strategizing. By the time he left, FDR found that he missed his friend and sent a note to Churchill in London which read, "It is fun to be in the same decade with you." With the Americans now in the war and the Russians fighting on the side of the Allies, Hitler's armies were pushed back, and victory was declared on May 8, 1945 in Europe. 3 months later in the East, Japan surrendered, marking the end of World War II. In a surprise that very same year, Churchill did not win re-election.
Yeah. I remember I was surprised when I learned that. Like, huh? What?
Following the war, Churchill continued to influence world affairs. He gave his speech on the Iron Curtain about the USSR threat and was strongly in favor of Britain's independence from the European coal and steel community, which was set up after the war to neutralize European competition for natural resources. Churchill actually served as Prime Minister again in 1951 and resigned at the age of 80. It was at this time that he was in deteriorating health. Churchill was intent on leaving his mark on history not just through clamoring for fame and power or placing himself at the center of the action. Indeed, he would write his own story and solidify a favorable view to be passed through the ages. At the end of World War II, Churchill wrote his best-selling series, The Second World War, and won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953.
Yeah.
In that same year, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. In 1965, after suffering a stroke 2 weeks earlier, Winston Churchill passed from this life until the next. It seemed the whole world felt the loss, and reporters remarked that it was the end of an era. The Queen saw to it that Churchill's funeral was the grandest of any commoner since 1852, which was on a scale befitting his position in history. His body lay in state in Westminster Hall for 3 days and nights, and no fewer than 320,000 people filed past to pay their respects. And as we move towards the end of this video, let me mention something interesting. 10 years ago, a fifth of all British teenagers polled believed Churchill to be a fictional character. His legend indeed may seem larger than life, and knowing the man, apart from his greatest moment on the...
Did he say British teenagers?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, come on.
Believed him to be
Did he say 15 years ago? Did I hear this right?
I heard 10 years ago.
Whatever. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 42, and we won't... Debbie's just a little bit older. I mean, come on. No.
Yeah.
What? Okay, that's really surprising.
I didn't think he's
Fictional character.
wasn't real.
That's odd. And surprising.
His legend indeed may seem larger than life, and knowing the man, apart from his greatest moment on the world stage, is harder to grasp. To say he was complex and contradictory is an understatement. We know he held himself in the highest regard, but Churchill also suffered in the depths of depression. He referred to it as his black dog. His stubbornness, courage, grit, and brilliance with words made him indispensable, and his legacy is one that will live on and inspire the good fight. And no doubt, Churchill will continue to be judged and analysed through the ages for his failed decisions and unpopular attitudes. He was a product of the time with an impossible job. Statesmen are not called upon to settle easy questions. These often settle themselves. It is where the balance quivers and the proportions are veiled in mist that the opportunity for world-saving decisions presents itself.
Love it. Well, I was wrong about that just being just about probably just World War II. In fact, I was happy to hear it was more of the...
A bit more background on his life.
Which is what I was
his
wanting.
upbringing, yeah.
The title threw me off. I thought maybe that's what it was going to be.
Very interesting.
I really enjoyed that. Lot learned there. I didn't know any of that stuff. I mean, I know a lot about, you know, when he entered into becoming a prime minister and all that, and then going forward, but nothing before that. If you liked this episode, you learned anything at all, please hit the like button. We'd appreciate it if you would. And it's free to
subscribe.
We're tacky. We have no shame. If you learned something, let us know, though, for real, because I would be interested to know. But, you know, all joking aside, you know, I can't understand why anyone would ever want to be in politics, personally. I can't get it. Right. The responsibilities of sending, you know, young men and women off to war, you know, and all of the stuff. That things, everyday decisions, small little decisions, thoughts you have that you put into practice affect people on such a grand scale, right? So I'm just going to say this because, you know, I don't like to talk about my own personal opinions on things. You know, in general, people that do this, they're putting themselves out there, and it's a lot of weight to have on your shoulders. So, yes, they're going to be ridiculed, they're going to be judged.
Microscoped.
Yep, that's a good one. And, you know, it is what it is. But I think, personally, having him as the prime minister during World War II was... What's the word I want to use for that? I don't know that I have a single word. It was just right.
Yeah.
That's it.
It was definitely needed at the time.
Yeah.
And I love watching along and seeing some of his quotes. Please let me know in the comments. Let us know in the comments, what is one of your favorite quotes by Churchill?
That's actually real. Yeah.
And please be nice in the comments if you don't like Churchill.
I really did enjoy learning about Winston Churchill. Whether you like the man, whether you don't like the man, it's still interesting to learn about these people that did impact the world. Yeah, absolutely. Impacted the way the world was going to go, right? So thank you for watching, and we appreciate you. And we do hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next. Until then, guys, as always, please love like jazz.
Be as strong as Tyson.
Bye.
Bye.